Cheers Season 3 is the start of a brand new era and I love it. This is the first time we meet Frasier, and to be honest, Frasier is not Frasier Crane, Frasier is Niles Crane. If you look at his mannerisms at the beginning, he is so much like Niles, who we meet in the TV show Frasier, and that baffled me. And I will say before I get in with the rest of the season, I won't give any spoilers, by the way. In fact, you know what, I probably will give spoilers, as I'm going to go through each episode and discuss kind of the main points, but I won't spoil each individual episode's conclusion. Frasier, to begin with, is difficult to watch if you've seen Frasier. It's quite uncomfortable. But that changes over time, but I have to say it's just absolutely wonderful. If I hadn't seen Frasier, I wouldn't be watching Cheers. And for me, Season 3 is really where the show begins to kick off and go in a fantastic direction. Okay, so the rest of the cast, all the same, no departures, thankfully. And as usual, I'm just going to kind of go through the episodes really briefly, discuss some of my thoughts on plot points, character developments from the previous series, etc. If you haven't seen the season, there may be some spoilers about what happens to certain characters, but as I said, I won't ruin the individual episode conclusions. So we have, in the first episode, Sam turns the other cheek. Sam has been drinking very heavily. That's not the title of the episode. The title of the episode is Rebound. I was looking at the wrong bit. In Rebound, part 1 and 2, Sam has been drinking very heavily. And obviously, that's quite important. First of all, he's a recovering alcoholic. And second of all, it proves that Diane meant something to him. And that's really paramount. Because their relationship often feels like Sam's just going along with it for an easy ride. Or an easy life. But actually, that action kind of suggests that that breakup did actually really affect him. And it's really interesting. Episode 3, I Call Your Name. We have Frasier and get to really kind of get to know Frasier a little bit more. And I absolutely love this. I think this is just about Diane finding her feet again as well in the bar, because obviously opinions are changing, moods are shifting. The dynamic of the group is not the way it always was. Fairy tales can come true. We have an episode just for Cliff here. I feel like Cliff's getting a lot more time from season 3 onwards, and he finds a shy counterpart who he takes a shining to. We know Cliff is awkward, but this seems to go very well for him. Whether or not it would be long term, I'm not going to say. And yeah, Sam turns the other cheek. We have some issues with Sam again, and Sam's dating, and I think there's quite a bit of how is he still coping without Diane, and also how is Diane coping, because I feel like Diane's still covering up a lot at this time, and there's still a lot of unresolved issues there. So this episode kind of touches upon that again after a couple of episodes of leaving it to one side, because it's no secret that while Diane is in this show, it is kind of the Sam and Diane show for a very long time. Episode 6 and 7, really quite emotional. So Coach finds a woman he becomes very fond of, and they hit it off really quickly and things progress really quickly. I love this one for Coach. We see a different side to Coach that we've not usually seen. The fact that he's an older character embarking on a romantic relationship is so... Can I say it's refreshing? Even though it's from many decades ago now. It's just not what one would expect from a sitcom these days, and I think it works fantastically well. I have a problem with episode 8. Episode 8 is Diane meets Mom, and Diane meets Frasier's mother. Frasier's mother in this, played by Nancy Marchand, not a problem with her acting at all, but she is not the visual image that is represented as Frasier's mother in Frasier. And this is where we start to learn, if you've, like me, watched Frasier first and then this, there are a lot of kinks in his background that don't iron out in time for the TV show. And, for example, Frasier has no brother. He never mentions his father as we would expect. There's no mention of Seattle at all, I don't think. So it kind of doesn't necessarily add up when you're watching it in reverse. But once you get past that, it's absolutely fine. An American Family, we get a look at Nick, Nick Tortelli, Carla's husband, and his new wife, Loretta. I'll be honest, I didn't like Loretta way back when. But as her character develops and we get to learn more about her, I started to warm to her. So if you've only seen season 3 and haven't progressed past this, stick with her. I think she's pretty decent. Diane's Allergy. This basically focuses on... This is where Frasier kind of comes into play as a psychiatrist, because Diane is having an allergic reaction to a dog that Frasier has, and the dog gets a different name at one point, which I thought was hilarious. But Diane's having these violent allergic reactions, and some very hysterical allergic reactions. I know one shouldn't laugh at a reaction, but it's funny the way the episode plays out. And Frasier, as a psychiatrist, begins to analyse that, and I think this is the first time we get to see a little bit of Frasier's professional side, which I obviously thoroughly enjoyed. Then we have Peterson Crusoe. This one, at the time, I didn't really have any emotional attachment to, but looking back, I can't believe I didn't get more upset, because Norm is my favourite character. In this one, Norm is worried that he is going to die because there was a problem with his x-ray, or there was maybe a blip on his x-ray, and suddenly he decides he's going to go away for a very long time and live his life. And at the time, I wasn't emotionally moved by it. I didn't seem to mind that Norm was saying he was going to be going away from Cheers for a long time. Looking back, I wouldn't have liked that at all. It's an interesting episode. It's a different kind of humour for Norm, because normally Norm is very hard to say. Normally, Norm is quick-witted, very dry humour, but this one relies on a bit more of a situational comedy. And ironically, since it's a sitcom, of course it does. But I feel like this story would have been better for Cliff. I feel like it would have been a better storyline for Cliff. And then we have Addiction Time, and Sam begins dating a friend of Diane's, and then when they're dating, he realises that Diane actually met Amanda when she was staying at the mental hospital. You can imagine how that plays out with Sam. It's also interesting that he would be dating a friend of Diane's. I don't know, it's not my favourite episode, but it's a pretty interesting one to look into Sam's character. Then we have Whodunit, which is a pretty interesting episode. So one of Frasier's mentors, Bennett Ludlow, brilliant name, suddenly takes a liking to Carla, and this is a pivotal point for Carla. I said there would be a spoiler here. It's not really the conclusion of the episode, but it is important for the rest of the episode discussions. Carla ends up becoming pregnant by Ludlow, and that's quite a bizarre storyline, but it's one of the many times Carla is pregnant. And apparently, Rhea Perlman was pregnant in real life. Also, so was Shelley Long, but they didn't write that into the storyline for Diane, of course. Next up, it's The Heart is a Lonely Snipehunter, and Frasier goes on a guys-only weekend with the rest of the gang. Frasier is not the kind of person to go on a guys-only weekend, so things turn out unnaturally for Frasier, and I thought that was a pretty decent episode. I liked it quite a lot. Then we have King of the Hill, which I personally think is pretty unmemorable. Sam plays in a charity tournament, softball. It's great to see the athletic side of Sam, but to be honest, I didn't really take much to that episode. Teacher's Pet. Sam has gone back to school to get his high school diploma, because we learned that he never graduated from high school, but he is now sleeping with the teacher. This is very much a Sam back to his own old ways kind of episode, We can see a little bit chafing from him that he's going back to his old ways. But this episode, I think, is a very nice character development for Sam. It gives him a little bit more of an arc. We see his personality beginning to bend. And it's not my favourite episode, but I think it's really nice. The next one I particularly enjoy. This is The Male Goes to Jail. And on a tough day when Cliff cannot make the rounds, he's very unwell, Norm decides to step in as postman, as mailman, and he gets arrested because they think that he is committing fraud and stealing people's mail when he gets caught. And Cliff, at least to begin with, doesn't necessarily admit that he actually gave Norm permission, even though he shouldn't have done, to do his mail round. And this is one of the first times we see the tension between Cliff and Norm, because they're good friends, but they're such good friends that they're going to get on each other's nerves. It's that kind of relationship that when you're so best friends and you spend so much time together, it's very easy to rub the other person up the wrong way. And this just develops quite a lot. I think in this episode I just particularly really enjoyed the narrative they chose to do that. Then we have Bar Bet, one of Sam's former friends, places a bet that he will win the bar from Sam. We have a lot of drinking going on, we have a lot of bets, gambling. Sam has now got to marry somebody with a specific name, and he and some of the gang try and track down any woman with this name and convince them to marry Sam by the end of a specific day. It's crazy, it's mental, it's really quite an insane plot, and it's really good fun. It's great fun to watch how it's executed because there's no direction for which way it's going to end. I honestly thought it was a brilliant episode. Episode 19 is Behind Every Great Man. Sam is being interviewed by somebody for Boston, the magazine reporter, and it's not his usual kind of woman, and Diane clocks this, and there's quite a bit of friction going on there. And I didn't really take to Paula, this character, but the episode itself I did enjoy. Episode 20 is If Ever I Would Leave You, which is, we get another bit of Nick Tortelli and we have some friction with his wife Loretta. And Nick is another character that I didn't really like too much to begin with. But the more we see of him, I actually warmed to him and I like what he brought to it and I like how Carla reacted to him. And this is another one of those, and I think Loretta, this is kind of when Loretta begins to be likeable because she is no longer just a lapdog, she's starting to have her own opinions. And for me, personally watching it, I was very happy with that. Episode 21, the executive's executioner. Norm gets a promotion, but part of that promotion is he has to fire people, and we see Norm sweating with anxiety as he tries to find ways to not fire people, and then he has to fire people, and it's a really interesting one for Norm's development as a character. We also get to learn what Norm actually does for a job. Norm is very much in employment, out of employment, in employment, out of employment, for the majority of the show. And I never know where he's at half of the time, but I thought it was a really nice episode. Episode 22 is Cheerio Cheers, and this is the start of something interesting. Frasier is accepted at a university in Italy, and he needs to go to Italy for a bit, and he invites Diane. And Diane decides to go. And this is one of the first times where we get to see locations that isn't just the bar. Certainly for the first 2 seasons, we only ever saw the inside of Cheers, or the exterior. But as the show, I guess, gained more budget, I'm not really sure what the decision was, but we start to see more, other scenes, other settings, other plots, other exteriors. And actually, I've just realised by the time we get to like season 10, that's not even an issue. A lot of it's filmed outside of the bar. But this is, this is a really interesting one for Frasier and Diane's relationship. The Bartender's Tale. This one's pretty brilliant. So Sam hires an older woman to run the bar, and she's brilliant. She's absolutely fantastic. And I wish we saw more of Lillian. Like, once this episode ends, I won't spoil things much, but we don't see Lillian again. And I think, well, what happened to her? Does she just do the shifts that we don't see? Because obviously we only see a tiny snapshot of Cheers' opening hours. But I loved the outcome of that. I won't say it, but I just thought it was really brilliant, and we still get to see some of Frasier and Diane in Italy as well. Episode 24, which is the penultimate episode, is The Bells of St. Cleats. And Carla believes that her former school principal is in Cheers. And she wants to get her own back on this principal, but obviously things don't always go to plan. And Cliff also gets a secret letter, or a letter from a secret admirer, and it's a little bit of a heartbreaking episode for Cliff, to be honest. Not massively so, but it's nice to get that little bit more emotional side rather than Cliff just always being the butt of people's jokes. Which, to be honest, even towards the end of the show, he's still the butt of jokes. But every now and then he gets a little bit of seriousness. Rescue Me, the last episode. Okay, so from now to the end of this video, this review, which is only going to be a couple of minutes, if I can keep my thoughts contained, there will be a spoiler. I'm about to spoil how season 3 ends. Well, no, I'm about to spoil how the beginning of the episode is. So, in the last episode of season 3, Frasier proposes to Diane. What does Diane say? I will not spoil that bit, but I will be honest, I didn't despite the fact that I'd watched Frasier before this and knew about his relationship with Diane, I had not expected it to be so soon. Because I didn't understand how Frasier would continue to be in Cheers after Diane did what Diane did in this episode. But it works out fantastically, and eventually we meet an even more wonderful woman for Frasier, who I'm looking forward to gushing about an awful lot. But it's a good episode. It's a really good episode. And it ends on a pretty emotional point if you're a fan of Sam, which I am. It's definitely a great episode. Not my favourite season conclusion. And there is a season that ends on a complete cliffhanger, and we'll get to there soon. But honestly, yeah, it's good, it's great. I can't wait to discuss the next episode. After this point, things just get ridiculously exciting. Let me know what you think of season 3.